Well, we moved up as far as we could in the lines that had been set up. For about a month, we were stymied. The whole invasion forces were held back. The German defense was brutal and effective. And so a line was formed behind or in front of the British troops and the American troops. And for about a month, we were confined within that line and could only fire artillery and anti-aircraft and some small arms fire at the enemy. We were also hampered by bad weather for the planes. But we managed to keep the German counterattacks from being effective. And they did launch a number of counterattacks. Not as many as they could have, because the feints, the false landings that we had set up north of Normandy with blown up tanks and blown up balloons to fool the Germans to think that's where the landing was going to be. We also installed General Patton as the commander of all these balloon defenses and let the Germans know that. So they were pretty sure that the main attack would come from the Pas de Calais, where this fake force was set up. So even after the landing on Normandy, Hitler had been convinced, because of Patton and other reasons, that the main thrust would come at Pas de Calais. It was the shortest distance from Britain to France. And there's another reason. Everybody felt that's where it would come. And he held in reserve many of the troops and armor that might have thrown the Americans back and the British back into the sea. By the time he marshaled them and released them, it was too late. We had poured in so many thousands of tons of weapons and munitions and vehicles and tanks that they just could not stop us. And in fact, we broke through at a town called Falaise, through what was called the Falaise Gap. It was a gap because for a very narrow area, we permitted the Germans to get out of this vast force with which we had encircled them. And when I passed through the Falaise Gap, about a day after it had been completely devastated, both sides of the road were covered with burned out tanks, burned out trucks, dead Germans, weapons, bloody weapons thrown aside. It was the most ferocious, dense, compact scene of hell that could be imagined. But I reveled in it. We got the bastards. When we were deadlocked, stalled there for about a month, I was not involved in any direct firing at all. All I could do was direct our airplanes to drop their bombs or to destroy their fighters. So I was directly responsible for the death. Although I never saw them actually, we got the reports. If we guided a British pilot, he would say tally-ho when we told him how to go. And and this was true for American pilots too, when they actually knocked off an enemy fighter, they would say, got the bastard, let's go, where's the next one? As calm as could be, and I had to direct them to the next possible target. So there's no question but that our work was effective, and that's what we were decorated for later on. As we swept through France, there was little resistance. The tanks did a marvelous job. They pushed the Germans back like crazy. After the Falaise Gap, we moved across France rather quickly. The armor moved faster than anybody could have expected. The defenses were destroyed more quickly and more efficiently than we expected. And Patton was able to move his tanks at a rapid rate right across France until his supply line got so long that he was at a distance from the fuel supplies. Tanks must have tremendous amounts of fuels. They can burn many gallons in an hour each, and there were large numbers of them. So as he got further and further from his supply lines, their progress was impeded by the lack of adequate gasoline, and it got so bad that anything that was not a tank was ordered to stop where they were. And there was established what was called the Red Ball Express. That was a bunch of 2.5-ton trucks, hundreds of them, that were driven by black soldiers. And they ran day and night. They would deliver a load from a warehouse or a stockpile of gasoline, deliver it right up to the forward tanks, empty them, turn around, get another load. And this stream was consistent and steady and very, very effective. But during that time, we couldn't move. When Paris was liberated, we went into Paris. We were not part of the troops who marched in on the day of liberation. We arrived there a couple of days after. And we were greeted just as the original fighters had been. People came out and brought bottles of wine for us to drink. Girls kissed us wherever they could find us. All the men shook hands. We were just welcomed, same as the original liberators, considered to be part of them. And so we had the advantage of all of that outburst of warmth and feeling that the French felt when Paris was actually liberated. And we knew, of course, that the commander in Paris had been given orders by Hitler to destroy the city. And he sent them a message, "Is Paris burning?" And they never answered the message because they never destroyed the city. The Germans just pulled out. On the way, many of them were shot by the FFI, the Force Française d'Intérieur, who were the guerrilla fighters. And whenever they could and saw a German, they killed him.
Those were the resistance fighters?
Those were the resistance fighters. And whenever they saw a woman who they knew had been friendly with the Germans before Paris was occupied, they shaved her and drove her through the streets in shame. So it's a very big deal liberating Paris. And although we weren't there the first day, we were there the third. We learned there was a nightclub called the Sphinx, and the emblem was an Egyptian sphinx. And we were encouraged to go there that night, and we did. And it was an outstanding facility, beautiful. Reminded me of Versailles, gorgeous chandeliers, lovely linen draped tables, silverware, crystal, and girls by the dozen, most of them at least half naked. And there was a stairway leading up. And every man in my outfit paired off with one of the women and went up the stairway. I, having recently been married and having some kind of scruples, decided not to do it. Well, after this parade had been going on for some while, I felt a tap on my shoulder. And I turned around, and my head was pressed into the breast of this naked, glorious-looking woman. And she rubbed it in until I could break away. And my friends were trying to encourage me to go upstairs. Well, I thought it was all pretty funny. We learned that 3 days before, these same girls had been entertaining German officers. And the turnover was day to day. So that didn't encourage me to take advantage of the facility.